This video will be the second one I've made, covering the shorter Tales of the Sun Eater universe. Included in this are Tales of the Sun Eater Volumes 3 and 4, as well as Dregs of Empire. I have not included the short story Parable in Iron. Additionally, I do not have access to the short stories Life, Falling Angels, and The Devil You Know. Let's dive in. The words "see it done" swim across Captain Corvo's memory. Hadrian Marlowe has just escaped the Tamerlane and the massacre on Yue. Octavia herself has stayed behind on the massive ship of Red Company to cover his retreat. She has struck her head and is shaky on her feet, but knows she must see the job completed. Octavia accepts her death is near and reflects on her past. Long ago, she had been purchased by a man named Valclain, along with her sisters from their school on Conthi. Of all her crashmates, Octavia is the last one alive of Valclain's 500 immortals. She had wandered space for a long while, committing atrocities in the name of following orders, until at last on Pharos she had met Hadrian. The half-mortal killed Emil Bordelon, her overseer, and to her surprise hired her and gave her a ship to command. Some 90,000 people began to answer to her, but now all of them lay dead on Yue. Octavia steels herself and glances at the scuttled tactical console. She then finds Lorian Aristides' console, but it is unresponsive. Octavia then rises, drawing her sidearm revolver. She only has 5 bullets, and then hears a small squad of Cielcid nearby. Octavia ambushes the 3 warriors, shooting 2. The third, however, has a shield that renders her gun useless, but with her great strength, imbued in her by inhuman breeding, Octavia crushes the remaining Cielcid to death. She only has 2 bullets left and takes up a fallen Cielcid sword. Octavia continues through the Tamerlane until she finds her captain's quarters. It has been miraculously left untouched throughout the Cielcid pillaging of the ship. She resupplies and then is struck with an idea. Octavia decides to overload the Tamerlane's capacitors and its laser weapons to create a massive explosion, hoping to take out thousands of Cielcid with her in death. A Nahute then manages to break inside, but Octavia runs to hide from it. The ship suddenly shakes though, and its sensors pick her up. She manages to destroy it, but its Cielcid user also appears and chases her into the hall. A dozen more of the Pale await her there, and Octavia races away to find an open shaft. She continues through the tunnels of darkness, "see it done" echoing in her head. Octavia nears the officers' gymnasium, and catches a glimpse of the carnage outside. There are countless thousands of Cielcid, all swarming the base of the Tamerlane. The spectacle silences Octavia for a brief moment, but then another squad of Cielcid spots her. She races away to the gun emplacement in a desperate retreat, slaughtering any Cielcid who dare attack her. Memories of her past come to her unbidden, the floating head of Valclain compelling her to murder her teachers on Conthi. She thinks of her companions of Red Company and sisters of old, all dead. Only Hadrian and Volca remain. With the tiredness and ferocity of a woman condemned to death, she attacks the last Cielcid party standing before her in the access hatch. But their numbers begin to overwhelm Octavia in her fatigued condition, and she is wounded several times. She falls to her knees, and then 3 Cielcid remain before her and grab her arms. They seem to gloat, and bring out their Nahute to deliver her a painful and humiliating death. Several more of the Pale emerge, and then Octavia lashes out in desperation. She manages to kill all the Cielcid, but a Nahute burrows into her side. She rips it out, but knows she is mortally wounded. The last Cielcid, as it dies, manages to stab her in the back, and Octavia finally begins to die. She still has not made it to the gun emplacement, and looks back at her revolver to find she has 1 bullet left. The sound of more footsteps approaches, but Octavia does not have the strength to fire the gun. Her final thought was of Hadrian and Volca, whom she had saved. They would avenge her, avenge all their people. Hadrian had not lied to her. She had expected death to feel cold, but there was warmth in that darkness, and more than warmth. There was light. The Archontic weapon Albedo can sense several men dead in the corridor behind her. She is capable of some sort of conscious thought, though the weapon is entirely artificial. A memory suddenly comes to her. It is of a young girl named Rosamund, who throws a small fruit into a pool. But Albedo shakes the thought off, believing her makers had instilled the memory in her and Rosamund isn't even real. Albedo saw her reflection in the polished metal of the door she meant to break. Red hair. Rosamund had red hair, curling around a pale, heart-shaped face with eyes blue as the eyes of Rosamund's father. She kicked, slammed one bare heel, titanium bone beneath synthetic flesh, and staved the steel door inwards as though it were cheap tin. Why had they made her so strong? They should not have made her so strong. Albedo moves through the fallen door, thousands of thoughts flickering in her head by the second. She seems to hear a girl named Iris speak to her. She was one of the other girls, one of the other dolls. The creatures built by the doctors and their teacher, servants of the Yellow King who rules the skyless city outside. She was a different model, with skin so dark it was almost black and startlingly green eyes. She leaned in conspiratorially, just like a real woman, and whispered, "We're whores, Rosa. Chanel told me. You've got a buyer, a master. Isn't that exciting?" Horror. Horror. She was reeling, falling. An error alert then hits Albedo, and more memories of Rosamund strike her. It is of her father and Rosamund herself, leaving their home world of Zalissa for somewhere new. Forevis? Forgoris? You can never say it right. The memories in Iris's words cause a glitch of some sorts in Albedo, who cannot reconcile her perception of reality with the memories of Rosamund. She recalls how she killed Mr. Black, her teacher, but was unable to kill the doctors. Albedo had run out into the city of Vorgassos and now attacks several guards. The whole while, she counts down in her head from 87 days. More men swarm her, but she does not fear their weapons and destroys them all. She takes several shots, though none are crippling. Albedo continues to tear through the guards, fighting off memories of Rosamund as she does. The battle extends to a courtyard, and Albedo recognizes soon she will be insurmountably surrounded. Nonetheless, she makes a mad dash for it, continuing to fight and search for Mr. Black. Albedo to the guards only appears to be a 19 to 20-year-old woman, and she smashes into a dark room. A contingent of new silver-armored men rises, with her target in the center. Albedo draws a firearm and shoots, but misses his head and hits him in the shoulder. Then, she becomes paralyzed, for the governor has engaged his override. Albedo looks up at her designer, Absalom Black, and Albedo knew him. Rosamund? He managed the name with difficulty, his frigid eyes beginning to melt. They said the replication failed. Father and daughter reunite, and Absalom is stunned. He had thought the personality construct had failed, and demands to talk to Albedo. It seems Albedo is the daemon controlling the ghost of Rosamund, the two personalities within her fighting for control. Apparently Rosamund had died, and Albedo was created to bring her back. Absalom reveals Rosamund had been killed on a shuttle by a bomb planted by his enemies 4 years ago. Albedo asserts he had no right to make her, to play God with the essences of his daughter. She resolves to kill Absalom, but then an old woman enters the room. She calls Absalom the name Isaac, and her own name is Amara. Amara tends to Absalom's wounds, and then the voice of Rosamund issues from Albedo. But Absalom looks at her in disgust, and pulls out a small gun and shoots her. Albedo crumples to the ground, her core systems going offline. She asks quietly if she has a soul, but Absalom simply, coldly, repeats the question at her. A man named Valen sits in another interrogation session, designed to verify he is still human. A Legion intelligence agent sits across him, asking the engineer about his time on Echidna, for the planet has been attacked by the Cielsen, and his story may tell the Emperor much about this new, unprecedented enemy. Valen reveals he had gone to Echidna with the second wave of troops, after Lord Cassian Powers had taken a slain Cielsen prince back to Forum. Valen arrived to find the Cielsen dug deep into Crestguard, and he was part of the force that had spent years driving them out. After 3 years of fighting, the Cielsen were all exterminated, and Valen was sent to Echidna to help with the mining dig. There he joined a team in the Valley of Lords led by Tor Mencius. The Scholias claimed the site was where the Cielsen buried their kings, dating back some 40,000 years. It was dangerous heresy, implying humanity was not the first species to sail the stars. There, Valen had been part of the discovery of the tomb of the Cielsen prince Zamahara. The Legion intelligence agent asked for more details about the Great Tomb, a burial site at the head of the Valley of Lords. To preserve its contents, Mencius had the engineers drill through the high doors of the tomb. Inside, they found dozens of Cielsen bodies, and also a domed chamber. There, Valen encountered the Hand, surrounded by strange writing that did not match the circular language of the Cielsen. The team found a sarcophagus of shocking size, and inside were the bones of a massive hand. The tomb instead seemed to almost be a religious site, and the bones of the Hand were pure black. The Legion intelligence agent is satisfied with his story and dismisses Valen. He warns him to not tell anyone else what he saw on Echidna, but Valen is still disturbed. He notes how the Hand did not match the physiology of a Cielsen hand, but the agent simply stares at him in silence. Valen is left alone, and begins recalling his first contact with the Hand, and how he had even touched the black bones. However, he suddenly snaps out of his daydreaming to find himself somehow on a shuttle. Valen does not know where he is or where he's going, and then a Palatine Lord appears beside him. Through the drug-induced haze, Valen recognizes him as Cassian Powers. M. Valen, you are one of only 6 people to enter the tomb of the Monumental on Echidna. Whether or not you are aware of it, you are in possession of information that threatens Imperial order. Powers reveals Valen has been forcefully enlisted into Hapsis, the contact division of the Legion that reports directly to the Emperor. Valen learns he found the hand of a god, what Hapsis calls the Monumentals. Valen's voice seems to double, and the Legion intelligence agent also appears. He is concerned Valen is splitting again, and suddenly Valen begins to see double. Valen, both Valens, begin to lose their bearings and have to be restrained. The agent, named Athos, tells him when he touched the bones, they caused the synapses in his brain to begin firing faster than normal. This process disrupted the quantum particles of his body, allowing him to travel through space-time as a particle and a wave. The reason 2 of him seem to exist at the same time. Powers then shows him a recording of Valen touching the bones. Valen, however, then doubles again and begins to choke. His second self has replicated outside the shuttle into the vacuum of space. Both Valens begin to suffocate, and the Valen on the shuttle dies in front of Powers and Athos. Captain Misra reports on an object registering on the outer edge of the Aglo Vale system. It had been moving at 39% the speed of light when it had hit an asteroid, and she and her crew suspect it may be a ship of some sort. They fly on the ISV Defiant, and Misra's officers debate the nature of the object. They serve the growing Solan Empire, which has been sending probes out into space for nearly 3,000 years now. The Defiant launches several probe buoys at the object, which turns out to be nearly 3 times the length of the ship. It is oddly shaped, and does not match Imperial architecture whatsoever. Comms are sent to the ship, but they receive no response. Misra gives orders to reel the vessel in, and she and her crew begin to worry it may be exonauts, the barbarians in outer space who married their humanity to machines. Misra takes a company of 20 to board the ship, and they manage to find a hatch inside. The party encounters characters in old-style English, suggesting the ship belonged to the Exos. They venture further in and begin searching for the bridge. Misra notes the rather primitive design of the ship, and then someone finds a small, cold tube with a human embryo. They believe the vessel may be a colony seed ship, but Misra has seen no sign of a warp drive. On they press, finding no signs of life or any bodies. There are no fugue crashes either, but then suddenly a large white shape tackles Misra to the ground. It grabs her gun and speaks to her in a strange, yet somewhat familiar language. The creature seems to be a man, covered in a bulky white environmental suit. Then, he removes a visor and everyone is shocked. It is undoubtedly a human man, but with pure silver eyes. An officer named Lysander realizes he is speaking Old English, and learns the man is named Wheeler. Wheeler does not know what the Solan Empire is, revealing he is the only crew left alive on the ship. Their life support had failed in transit, and Wheeler then mysteriously utters there were 12 of them, saying they were uploaded. Misra comes to believe Wheeler is an exonaut, but then he claims he is from Earth, though the planet was destroyed nearly 3,000 years ago. However, Lysander comes to believe it is possible Wheeler is telling the truth. Owing to the theory of relativity, if Wheeler's ship was able to push light speed without a warp drive, his story holds true. Most importantly, it also implies that Wheeler is Americani, an ancient argonaut straight out of history textbooks. He has no idea the galaxy has changed entirely, shaken by the Foundation War and the new Stolen Empire. Misra then orders for the ship to be destroyed, knowing Wheeler must also go with it. On Hyodon Station, an extra Solarian, one Simon Fabre, watches a young girl nervously approach him. She appears to need help from him, but the hour is late and he turns her away, wanting to get dinner. He recognizes her as a homunculus and listens as the girl confides to him that her sister may have been killed. The girl tells Simon her name is Irene, or Nines, and she and her sisters are part of Madame Vigrant's dancing company. Simon agrees to hear her out, for he is a private detective. She has heard of Simon's reputation for taking out the more unsavory and villainous organizations on the station, and hopes he can help her. Additionally, at one point in his life he was even a knight for the Empire. However, his body had been brought to Hyodon Station by a man called Basil, who rigged him to an extra Solarian machine that gave him inhuman life. Nine shows him a picture of her sister Maria, virtually identical to her given their nature as homunculi. Maria has been missing for 3 days, and Simon openly guesses she is dead already. Nines confesses Madame Vigrant has not been told yet, as Maria had been seeing a boy against the strict rules of the company. Simon asks Nines if it's possible Vigrant killed Maria, as all the sisters are arguably expendable. Nines is silent for a moment, and then asks Simon to find out the truth and to kill Vigrant if she is guilty. Simon refuses to help her, stating he is not an assassin for hire. Nines leaves in silence, and Simon makes his way to a Mandari noodle shop. As he eats, on a screen he sees by coincidence an ad for Madame Vigrant's company. His interest piqued. Simon finds Vigrant's opera house and searches for stage access. He tries to break in through a loading dock, but is discovered by a security guard. Simon tries to bluff his way in, but is forced to knock the guard out. He sneaks his way in with the help of the guard's terminal, but then encounters a shocked girl by the lavatory. He tells her he is a courier with a message for Vigrant, and she catches on to the ploy and plays along. Simon then claims his master had found a sister wandering in the city, implying it was Maria. He asks to see Vigrant, but the girl is hesitant. Apparently, only one Dr. Afonso is permitted to see the Madame. They pass further into the opera house and stop before a door. The girl calms Afonso, stating Simon has news of Maria. He notes the sharpness of confusion in the tone of Afonso, which likely confirms Maria's death. Afonso emerges, bearing a lapel belonging to Sen Biologics, a large corporation on the station. Simon sees a clean laboratory behind the doctor, and reveals it was actually Irene his alleged master has found. Afonso states that men have been dispatched to find her, and Simon then catches a glimpse of an operating table. On it are 2 human lungs, which seem to be in poor condition. Afonso claims that Simon's fake master can keep Irene, bluffing Vigrant has more clones on the way. Simon asks if Vigrant is suffering from poor health, wondering if the dancers are being used to harvest organs to keep the Madame alive. The doctor plays dumb, and losing his patience, Simon draws a high matter sword. Afonso drops the facade immediately, revealing Vigrant is over 500 years old and needs the girl's organs to sustain her life. The inhumanity of it all sickens Simon and his imperial blood, and he learns Maria is definitively dead. Simon coldly demands to be taken to Vigrant, and a terrified Afonso leads him to a penthouse suite. Inside is a sea of medical instruments and a haggard, withered shell of an old woman. It is Vigrant, desperately clinging to life. Upon hearing Afonso arrive, she asks if there has been word from Vorgassos. Simon steps forward and tells Vigrant Irene no longer belongs to her. With shocking indifference, Vigrant implies all the girls, clones of her younger self, have served her purposes for years to the point she doesn't even know how many have been killed. Vigrant then triggers an alarm, and Simon draws his sword again. He slashes a nearby ventilator, causing Vigrant to wheeze in panic. Assured the Madame will die soon, he turns and races back to the lift. As it heads down, Simon hopes the remaining girls will be able to carve out new lives for themselves on the station. The doors open, and he surrenders himself to the guards, shouting the Madame is dead. A 15-year-old Cassandra Marlowe stands in the Parati du Alcarche with 3 other children sprawled at her feet. She holds her twin swords and calls for the 3 girls, Amuhia, Piedam, and Naziha, to get back to their feet. Naziha curses Cassandra for her off-world origins and tries to attack, but Cassandra easily outclasses her. The other 3 novices had attacked Cassandra, but her skill in swordplay far surpasses theirs. Nonetheless, they call her a freak, not a true Jadian. Cassandra asserts she has never wanted to be one, knowing all her life she has been different from everyone else. She backs up against a fountain, nearby where she had been drilling alone before the 3 girls had attacked her. The bullying is not new to Cassandra, who has been beset by attacks ever since she started training at the fire school. The 3 girls renew their attack, and Cassandra calls upon the Marlowe devil within her for strength. She defends herself from a flurry of blows, losing her right-hand sword. Cassandra lands a crushing blow on Amuhia's mouth, breaking several teeth. They all freeze at the sight of blood drawn, and then Grandmaster Hydarnes, Maskolos of the First Circle, appears. He is a figure of legend, rumored to be centuries old. Hydarnes demands to know what is going on, and immediately sees through the attackers' lies when they try to blame Cassandra. They are dismissed to Medica, and Hydarnes then turns to Cassandra. She admits she struck first, despite the odds against her. Hydarnes softly tells her defeating an enemy without violence is the highest art, and that in the name of fairness, she will be punished as well. Cassandra thus runs on a 20-mile circuit, taking in the sights of Jad along the way. On a descent from the Scala Aspara, she sees her father Hadrian making a climb to a shrine. Cassandra tells him about the fight, complaining about the punishment. Hadrian then tells her how he broke the Sullan Emperor's nose for insulting Valka, as well as the story of how he met her on a mesh. Hadrian openly states she will never be Jadian, but it matters little to him, for Cassandra is, and always will be, his daughter. Several prison guards huddle around a beaten man laying before them. That man is Lorien Aristides, one of Hadrian Marlowe's greatest lieutenants. They are on the prison world of Belucia, where Lorien has been sent into exile following Hadrian's crime of striking the Emperor. It is a sentence Lorien accepted when he helped Hadrian escape to Jad, and the guards look on him with a mixture of fear, disgust, and hatred. Now he is alone on the icy world, pain racking his body from the most recent beatdown. Lorien resigns himself to death, languishing on the floor of his cell. Belucia itself is utterly void of life, composed of little else but snow and ice. It has several mirror grids that keep the world in a perpetual state of day, and the only structures Lorien sees are the camp city, prison, and a single high tower. Presently, Lorien is prodded to his feet by a fellow prisoner, an older man who tells Lorien it is his job to ensure he doesn't die. His name is Duke, and after a quick examination, assesses that Lorien has 2 fractured ribs. He tells Lorien he will also be needed in the machinery shop for work there. To Lorien's shock, Duke does not know who Hadrian Half-Mortal is, for the prisoners are kept in the dark from the outside world. Lorien's orientation in the machine shop begins immediately, where he learns he will be working 12-hour shifts. He is kitted with an envirosuit, and is told he is fortunate enough to not have to venture out into the true cold outside the camp. Lorien adjusts to the bright landscape created by the mirror grids, and he and Duke head down the main road towards the motor pool. It is somewhat near the tower, and inside he is introduced to another mechanic named Baskar. The mechanics are skeptical of the rumors flying around Hadrian, reminding Lorien again of the destruction of Red Company on Yue and the death of Valka. Time passes, and Lorien settles into the new, unfamiliar routine of manual labor. No one has ever escaped Belucia, but Lorien does learn of a group called the Outborn. The Outborn are a group of people rumored to have somehow scraped a living for themselves out on the ice, past the jurisdiction of the guards. He becomes accustomed to his fellow mechanics, but throws a spanner at one of them when they insult Valka. The weeks turn into months, but Lorien has no real sense of time. He knows he is aging though, as he is obviously not Palatine. Duke's pod of workers pays him little heed, but Lorien is bullied often by the other criminals of Volusia. One day, a man named Dodd grabs him by the throat. Dodd is part of the rig crews that ride outside into the cold, and seems to have taken a keen dislike to Lorien. He warns him to stay away from the crew quarters, openly threatening him. One day, Duke's crew is forced to repair Dodd's crawler within a day, and Lorien resigns himself to another long day of work. As his labors begin, Lorien reflects on his family, who he has not seen in centuries. He had 3 half-brothers, all powerful men who treated him with kindness. Lorien had played the Cielson in their war games as boys, and the 4 had even recreated the Battle of Vorgassos. Then, he hears a faint knocking sound, almost like a small animal. He tracks the sound to a locker, where inside Lorien finds a girl gagged and tied up. She seems to be only 15 years old, and is the reason why Dodd warned Lorien to avoid this particular area. Lorien cuts her bonds, but she understandably does not trust his intentions. He manages to learn her name is Tamara, and she was sold by her mother to Dodd and the other imprisoned Martian legionnaires. To his shock, Tamara also turns out to be outborn. He rushes away to bring Duke and another mechanic named Goen over to help, but Tamara dies just before they come back. Business continues as usual on Volusia, with no punishments being doled out for the death of Tamara. Lorien despises that no justice will be given to Dodd, and begins to plan how to get his revenge. But he cannot find a viable strategy, and decides to do nothing for the time being. Duke's crew manages to fix Dodd's crawler, but Dodd confronts Duke for the repairs taking longer than normal. Lorien happens to eavesdrop, and bursts into the conversation when Dodd curses him for finding Tamara dead. He then whips out a plasma cutter, which he has modified to shoot out a wide spray of deadly plasma. Lorien ignites it, but his hands shake and the blast hits Dodd in the knees. Dodd tumbles to the ground, and Lorien stands over him. He blasts Dodd directly in the face, his first kill by his own hand in cold blood. The onlookers stare at him in stunned silence, and Duke rushes up to Lorien and asks him to put the cutter down. The Martian guard arrives and stuns Lorien, his world fading to black. He is put on trial in front of Camp Commandant Vaclav Carter. Lorien does not deny the charge of murder, instead accusing the Martian guard of not doing their own jobs to uphold the Emperor's justice. To Vaclav's frustration, much of Lorien's records are sealed by Imperial order, though he and the jury know of his service with Hadrian. Lorien then spies Lorcan Brethnak in the audience, the former director of Legion Intelligence and political enemy of Hadrian. Vaclav asks Lorien why his record is sealed, and Lorien concedes he has extensive battle experience fighting the Cielson. He confirms the tales of Hadrian's powers are real, and Carter then decides Lorien will be put back into feud. Lorien then learns Hadrian is alive on Jad, seemingly content in hiding there. He goes silent for a moment, wondering if Hadrian has given up the fight to avenge Red Company. Brethnak then suggests Lorien be sent out to one of the camps farther out in the wastes. Carter agrees, for it will be a way to get him out of their hair. Thus Lorien is transferred to Snowhead, where he works for 2 years sorting scrap. After, he is sent to Farside, an icy cold desert where life is considerably harder than it was in the motor pool. The whole while, Lorien ponders the rumors of Hadrian's comfort on Jad, a deep sense of betrayal sinking into him. Soon, his time on Volusia stretches out to 8 years, with no prospects of ever leaving. Lorien eventually joins the salvage crew, where he is still looked down on for his mutations as an Intis. On one run, he finds another plasma burner stowed away. It is defective, but Lorien decides to keep the gun. At the end of the shift, the crawler heads back to Farside Camp. Lorien has a paltry dinner, and their squad leader Jeff tells him Martian patrols have picked up recently. The Outborn may be gearing up for a large attack, possibly to try and find a way to escape Volusia. Sometime later, on another run, Lorien is ordered to grab a cutter rig with a young man named Daru. They depart the grounded shuttle their crew is working on and return to the crawler. Obtaining the rig, Lorien and Daru begin dragging it back when they suddenly hear several bangs of gunfire. They race to hide in the wreck of a nearby scuttled Legion cruiser and find a gun turret. Peering back towards the shuttle, Lorien observes several strangers in patchwork cloaks holding their crew hostage. Startled, Lorien realizes the strangers are the Outborn and watches as several men are ruthlessly executed. There is no sign of Martians arriving to aid the situation, and Lorien's mind races with new questions he has about the Outborn. The Outborn depart, taking several of the men as slaves. A survivor named Fives emerges from hiding, and upon finding Lorien and Daru, accuses them of collaborating with the Outborn. The Martians finally arrive and take them all in for questioning. Lorien is moved back to the motor pool, still able to retain his hidden gun. More months pass, and rumors of an Outborn raid eventually died down. Lorien keeps a low profile, but hateful rumors continue to swirl around him. One day, Daru warns him Fives and some other men are planning to ambush him after one of his shifts. However, after a few weeks, both he and Daru are reassigned to a salvage pod. To Lorien's dismay, Fives also joins them. Their leader, Dadan, drives them hard, and once more Lorien begins to lose himself in the routine of their work. One shift, Fives finds him alone, bringing two other men to confront Lorien. They accuse him of being an Outborn spy, and Lorien then draws his weapon. It is a grand bluff, for it is still defective. He inches towards a nearby sledge, but his ankle gives out and he falls. There is a mad scramble for the gun, and Lorien is beaten down while one of the men grabs the plasma cutter. Fives tries to pull the trigger, but nothing happens. Then, something hits Fives in the side of the head. A dazed Lorien tries to get to his feet, removing the mask of his envirosuit. He reflects on his days with Hadrian and Red Company, resigning himself to death. But then he sees Daru standing over him, armed with a steel bar and a spiked end. Daru has killed Fives and his accomplices, and reveals Dadan had tried to attack him as well. Lorien and Daru are now outlaws, and Lorien realizes they cannot return to the camp or Martians. He proposes instead they take the sledge out to try and find the Outborn. They set out in a vaguely westward direction, Lorien having no plan whatsoever. They have limited food and power to the sledge. Lorien tells Daru tales, the true tales, of Hadrian's exploits. He reflects how Daru has become almost a friend to him, and decides to fire off one last attempt to survive. Lorien grabs a flare gun and fires it into the sky, and they begin the long wait for a response. Sometime later, Lorien jolts awake to the sound of light tapping on the sledge. An Outborn man appears, wielding a gun. Lorien claims they have gifts, for he has spent his spare time stripping down the various parts of the sledge for their valuable metals. And Lorien leaves the sledge alone, telling Daru to stay behind. He approaches the Outborn and asks for sanctuary. Lorien offers to help the Outborn fight against the Martians, citing his experience in military command. The group of Outborn surrounding him, led by someone named Rala, listen to him closely. It is then revealed that Rala is a woman, something of a rarity on Belucia. After some consideration, Rala agrees to take him to someone called Sachin, who will decide his fate. Lorien and Daru are loaded onto the Outborn skiff, and are taken to a place called Deepstone. Rala, whose real name turns out to be Sarala, takes Lorien aback with her light beauty. They arrive at Deepstone, where Lorien is immediately taken to see Sachin. Sarala escorts him through the civilization of the Outborn, who have settled in a massive underground cavern. Lorien knows the Outborn believe he is likely a spy for the Martians, and is surprised to see them have a strong sense of military organization. He then comes to believe the Outborn can be transformed into a tremendous fighting force. He has severely underestimated the capabilities of the Outborn, meaning the Martians likely have as well. At last the party reaches a study of sorts, in the home of Sachin. Lorien meets the older man, who reveals he is Satyalwan Kalan, former soldier on the battleship Archeron at the Battle of Comum. He fully recognizes the deeds of the Tamerlane and Lorien in the fighting, and also turns out to be an Intis like Lorien. Sachin confesses he participated on a raid to kidnap girls of Comum, the reason he has been sentenced to Belucia. Lorien then proposes for all of them to escape Belucia by blowing up the tower. It will force the Martians to bring shuttles down to evacuate, upon which Lorien proposes they steal the shuttles to find a larger ship. Sachin is skeptical, for he is partially Palatine and several hundred years old already. He says there are tens of thousands of Outborn, and there is simply no way to get everyone off Belucia in a timely enough manner. Sachin believes eventually the Empire will leave Belucia, but Lorien asserts they will simply destroy the planet once it no longer suits their needs. After some further debate, Sachin agrees to take Lorien in, believing his people must have a hope for survival. Thus Lorien enters a position of military command in the Outborn. He begins leading raids on Martian transports alongside Daru. A full year passes, with many successful attacks carried out. However, female prisoners are taken under close guard from the fortresses, as Sachin looks to grow the Outborn population to keep it sustainable. Sarala serves by Lorien's side, his successes earning him a newfound respect in her eyes. Lorien himself has changed. He no longer sees himself as a true commander, believing that man to have died the day he awoke on Belucia for the first time. After a successful raid, Lorien questions 4 surviving Martian prisoners. The Centurion refuses to give him any useful intel on the Downwell garrison, and Sarala executes another prisoner in cold blood. Lorien threatens to abandon the prisoners in the gold to die with no glory, and the Centurion confesses there are 3,200 men stationed there. Time is short before Martian reinforcements arrive, and the Centurion then recognizes Lorien. Lorien asks about the tower station, to which the Centurion gloats and states there are still thousands more soldiers. Frustrated, Lorien kills the Centurion and returns to the raiders. He examines the stolen cargo, which turns out to be 6 shuttle microfusion reactors, all of which can be modified into atomic bombs. These will be the tools of Lorien's daring operation, which he believes he must carry out with or without Sachin's support. He and Sarala return to Deepstone, where the Outborn celebrate with their spoils. However, Lorien knows the theft of the reactors will put Downwell on high alert. To his frustration, Daru does not fully buy into Lorien's escape plan, instead content to stay on the surface with Sachin in relative comfort for the rest of his shorter lifespan. Lorien instead wants better for himself, to finally fly away from these dregs of the Empire. Daru leaves him to join the festivities, and then Sarala comes up to his side. To his surprise, she knows of his plan to escape, and Lorien wonders out loud if he should go to the extra Solarians. They could fix his condition, and most importantly would not look down on him for his deformities. Sarala then asks to accompany Lorien, for Sachin has apparently arranged a marriage for her. Lorien agrees, telling her the attack on Downwell with Sachin will take place in 2 weeks. There he plans to take political prisoners to prevent the Martians from simply bombing the camp, allowing them to steal a shuttle. The time of the decisive raid finally arrives, and Lorien scouts the tower from a distance with Sachin. It has been years since he has seen the tower, and he talks over strategy with Sachin. There will be a first ground assault designed to let loose the prison barracks and cause an internal riot in the camp. The women there will be taken hostage, and Commandant Carter will be a primary target as insurance against orbital bombardment. Sachin reminds Lorien of his status, the effective king of Belucia, and Lorien as his commander, but still servant. The first bombs from the Outborn are dropped, beginning the attack. Lorien waits with the others for the riots inside to break out. He and Sarala will lead separate parties in the assault, before linking up to try and make a break for it. The military action fills Lorien with a strange sense of comfort and familiarity. Daru joins Lorien's side as they fly towards the tower. The streets of the camps are erupting with vicious fighting, but they manage to make it to the landing zone. Along with Sarala, they fight their way to the doors, with Lorien in the thick of the fighting. His comfort turns to unease, for he is normally used to the clean game of military strategy command rather than being on an actual battlefield. The Outborn escort Lorien through the war zone, Sarala cutting a deadly swath through the Martian forces. News suddenly comes in that Sachin has been killed trying to take the Commandant. Lorien finds himself taking charge, rallying the Outborn to continue the fight and carry out the mission. But several group leaders lose hope and begin to withdraw their forces. It seems the grand assault will come to a whimpering end. Lorien orders Sarala to use the atomics on the anchor towers to throw the station into deep orbit. Daru learns Lorien and Sarala are planning to escape, but just then the Martians finally manage to take to the air. Lorien's men begin to take a beating, deprived of the backup they need to survive. They are left with no other way but forward and desperately fight on. Sarala becomes badly wounded in the shoulder and dies at Lorien's feet. One of her men turns on Lorien in anger, and Lorien silently shoots him. His paltry force numbers only 13 men and Daru. Imperial forces close in on them, and several of the Outborn turn to kill Lorien. Daru steps in front of Lorien and saves his life, taking several hits from the Outborn's energy lances and dying. With no one left to him, Lorien turns and flees, managing to slip away from the battle. He makes it to a hangar, where he catches a glimpse of a massive lift carriage for the tower. Also there are the cables tethering the orbital station above to the planet. There is no activity from the Outborn on his comms, and Lorien recognizes that he is alone and likely to die. He scrambles away from an incoming Martian patrol, but trips on a power cable and falls. Lorien hears boots on the ground and looks up inexplicably to see Hadrian. "What is it I always say, Aristides?" asked Hadrian Marlowe, crouching before him. The Devil of Medjua was dressed in all black, as was his custom. He offered Lorien his hand, his left hand, the hand he had lost fighting the Cielsen and had been restored by the king of Vorgassos. "Always forward, always down," Lorien breathed, completing the quotation. Hadrian points up and vanishes. Lorien decides that if he is to be caught, it may as well be trying to escape. He spies a ladder and races towards it, climbing towards a lift carriage tower. Martians appear below him, having heard something but not thinking to look up. Miraculously, Lorien manages to sneak into an airlock and shoots the camera. He enters a locker room, the main area of the lift carriage. He races around and shoots all the cameras, hoping the Martians will have not seen him and impound the carriage. Lorien finds the lift door and keys it, knowing the system will flag it. However, he then opens a nearby grate, creating a false trail for the Martians to find. Lorien hopes the Martians will be tricked into thinking a fugitive had escaped while the carriage was still on the surface. Lorien then runs back to the locker room, stealing a ration kit on the way. He climbs into an empty enviro suit, being able to hide his much smaller body in the suit meant for larger men. With the rations and his rebreather from his time in the wild, Lorien will be able to breathe and survive in the suit, while the Martians fumigate the carriage as a security precaution. The Martians enter the carriage and begin their search, but Lorien has predicted all their movements perfectly, and they soon leave him alone in the tower carriage. Time passes slowly, and after hours, Lorien concludes the battles and riots outside must have all ended. He thinks of Tamara, Sarala, and Daru as he continues to wait. Soon air is pumped back into the carriage after several days. Then at last, the crew for the carriage returns, and the lift begins to ascend from Volusia. Lorien has miraculously escaped the prison world and made it into space, but he must still make it off the orbital station somehow. The crew leaves out the airlock once the lift stops, and Lorien finally scrambles out of the suit. Not bothering to kill the cameras again, he steals a woman's uniform that can fit him. Exiting the airlock, he passes by some Martian guards without a second glance. Lorien makes it to the dockyards of the orbital station, knowing his officer's disguise will only work for a little while. It is also only a matter of time before evidence of him stowing away is found back at the carriage. A thrill goes through him nonetheless, being the first man to ever escape Volusia. Then, another officer stops him, but instead asks Lorien for directions to the station commandant's office. Relieved, Lorien lies and gives him fake instructions, and then on a whim asks him where a nearby fast courier can be found. Somehow avoiding piquing the other officer's suspicion, Lorien is able to learn a ship may be in docking bay C-17. There, he finds a Marathon-class shuttle designed to carry a single passenger as quickly as possible from one point in space to another. Lorien glances outside and catches a glimpse of Volusia below, and then opens the door to the shuttle. He then hears two voices, and a man emerges. Lorien shoots him, and confronts a female junior officer. It is now just the two of them on the shuttle, and Lorien knows that thousands of Outborn will die because of his escape, the brutal vengeance that will be taken by the Martians. Lorien forces the terrified officer to prepare for departure. Tower control patches in, and the woman frantically tries to warn them of Lorien's hijacking. He is forced to kill her as well, and takes control of the shuttle himself. Lorien tries to get the ship far away enough from the station so he can jump to warp. He begins taking fire, but manages to get to light speed and escape. There were stars in the darkness ahead, a thing he had not seen in he knew not how many years. He had forgotten how beautiful they were, cold and bright and distant. Beautiful, but Lorien always thought the stars were terribly sad. The little man punched the controls, and the stars stretched and blurred, ran blue as lapis lazuli. He blinked, felt tears on his cheeks. There was no going back. Basander Lin waits for the enemy delegation to arrive, standing under the two suns of Pharos. He dislikes being on the surface, preferring the closure of a space warship instead. He and his officer Priska Greenlaw are expecting a parley to arrive from Emil Bordelon. Lynn hopes they can make progress in taking down the corrupt Admiral Marius Went, who has seized control of the planet. Bordelon had initially been on his and Hadrian Marlowe's side, but had betrayed them to Went. The meeting takes place in a mining refinery, and soon Bordelon's men arrive. Among them is the towering Norman homunculus Octavia Corvo and Bordelon himself. He asks for Lynn's surrender, and Basander in turn asks for the return of several hostages held by the traitor. Among them is the translator Hadrian Marlowe, who had taken them to this planet in his mad search for Vergassos. Bordelon refuses to give up Hadrian, who he has recognized as Palatine. Lynn knows that with the ship Balmung in orbit above, he effectively has control over the military situation. However, the talks go nowhere, Basander unwilling to risk the lives of the hostages. He vows instead to strike at Went's key points of infrastructure and turns to depart. Bordelon hurriedly stops him, and then pushes forward a beaten hostage. The hostage is revealed to have given away his Imperial Legionnaire origins, dealing a blow to the mission. Lynn and Hadrian have been posing as a roaming band of mercenaries in their hunt for Vergassos. Lynn refuses to stand down, as Bordelon asserts he and Went believe the Emperor is planning to annex Pharos. His men then draw out their weapons, Basander remaining motionless. He has but 84 men, and as more soldiers fan out around them, Basander sees they are vastly outnumbered. Basander gives a signal, and then a bright red laser beam lights up the refinery, briefly blinding Bordelon and his men. Taking advantage of the confusion, Basander gives orders to secure the hostage before them and fall back. For Bordelon's treachery, he now resolves to annihilate him from orbit. His soldiers retreat, but shots ring out behind them. Bordelon's troops begin to pursue them, and Octavia Corvo fires on Basander. Lynn grabs the shaky hostage, fighting in hand-to-hand combat, and gets a shot off at Bordelon. The traitor ducks away, and Basander issues orders for the Balmung crew to fire on Bordelon's ground cars. He fights a desperate retreat to the awaiting shuttles, but the hostage is wounded in the side. Looking back, he cannot see Bordelon or Corvo, rage filling him. The hostage bleeds out and dies, and Basander's surviving men begin to take fire from the trees around them. He is forced to lead them into a nearby building for cover as two shuttles manage to take to the air. Basander orders for Greenlaw to take one of the shuttles and pick him and his band of men up from the roof. Another shot kills one of his men before him, and he turns and sees Octavia Corvo, leveling a handgun at his chest. She is conspicuously alone, and the two soldiers charge at each other. Corvo's inhuman strength surprises Basander as they grapple, and he is thrown to the ground. But Octavia does not kill him, instead standing still as Basander rises and draws a gun. She tells him the hostages are alive and takes a step forward. Basander fires at her and charges again. Octavia then admits she has let Hadrian escape with the Jadian woman Jeannin, and then asks Lynn to kill Bordelon and Went. Octavia, as a mercenary, is bound to the honor of those who hold her contract, and Basander then shoots her in the shoulder to cover them. The shuttle arrives, and Greenlaw prepares to fire on Octavia, but Basander stops her, telling his officer Octavia is on their side. Hadrian Marlowe hears great drums, seeming to echo from the monstrous Yeltsin world ship. He stands with two of his closest companions, one of them being Polino. Valka Ondera, princess of the outer stars, reclined amidst tapestried cushions. They are on the world of Uptuka, which has been besieged by the Yeltsin for some 10 long years. Prince Marlowe's forces had come to its rescue, inducing a stalemate in the fighting. Now, the Yeltsin Prince Suryandi has offered to battle Hadrian in single combat for control of the planet. Hadrian looks back at his wives, Valka and the Amazon warrior Octavia Corvo. Valka warns him she may not be able to bring him back from the dead, and Hadrian's companion from Delos, Yanar, comes forth. The Yeltsin prince is seen emerging from the Yeltsin world ship, and Yanar grabs the 3 Black Panthers of Medua, Elita, Aisha, and Absalom. Hadrian sets down on a crater in the world ship with his entourage, where an arena has been constructed. Countless Yeltsin, likely part of some inhuman court, have gathered to watch the spectacle. Prince Ngama Suryandi waits for Hadrian, standing tall and proud with 4 arms and 4 mighty swords. The two commanders speak to each other, Hadrian refusing to let the Cielsen ravage the worlds of humanity. His great ship Tamburlaine hovers above Uptuka. Hadrian turns to Yanar and asks him to ensure Valka and Octavia's safety, revealing Octavia is somehow with child. Suryandi strides forwards, and then declares that Cielsen will gain control over Hadrian's people if Marlow falls. It is a clever trap, and Hadrian nonetheless resolves to fight. A circle is drawn, and Prince Marlow turns to his delegation. He locked eyes with Valka, and the witch's voice resounded in his ears, though her lips moved not. "Shall I break him, beloved?" Marlow's smile did not falter. "Only on my mark, lady." He knew that she could hear his thoughts, though he had no power to project them as she. This must seem right. Hadrian steps into the circle and faces Suryandi and its 4 adamantine blades. Hadrian ignites his high matter sword as the Cielsen prince charges. The duel is vicious, the delegations of both princes looking on with bated breath. Then Hadrian catches the eye of Valka, who silently nods. "You have heard it said that Hadrian Marlow possessed inhuman powers, preternatural abilities. It is so. But you have heard it said that these abilities were a gift, an inheritance granted to him by the Maker, the Manus Dei, that a hand descended out of hyperspace and granted him authority as vassal and vavassor of the Creator himself. The truth is that his powers were granted him by his witch wife, bestowed upon him in some red ritual in the throes of ecstatic passion. I have seen him fight on countless battlefields, and so can tell you. Seeing him fight was like seeing Achilles reborn, like watching Diomedes battle the very gods at Ilium of old, but he was touched by no divinity." Hadrian suddenly leaps into the air nearly 24 feet into the sky, awing the crowd. His delegation chants "the devil" over and over again as the combatants re-engage. Suryandi, however, manages to break Hadrian's guard and throws a blow right at his neck. But Valka's voice thunders in Hadrian's head, and through her inhuman power stops the blade just as it barely pierces skin. Suryandi knows he has been robbed of victory, but Hadrian then moves like lightning and cuts off one of the prince's hands. They each back away, knowing the entire fate of the war depends on this one fight. For the Cielsen, without Suryandi, will succumb to anarchy and infighting among the 6 remaining generals. Again, Suryandi pierces Hadrian's defenses, a black blade peeling towards Marlow's face. But Valka again saves him, and as Hadrian raises a hand, she stops the blade just before his palm. Hadrian rallies and then finally gains the advantage. Using Valka's aid in secret, he traps another of Suryandi's blades against his ribs, then puts his sword to the Cielsen's throat. Suryandi is forced to kneel, amazing the onlookers. The truth was that Valka Marlow Ondera, witch princess of the outer stars, bride of the devil, held the demon prince Suryandi in the palm of her mind's hand. So it was that when he knelt, it was not he who knelt at all, but Valka whose will pushed him to his knees. Suryandi is humiliated in defeat, and Hadrian spares him, for in his mind he seeks to save both humanity and the Pale. It is through Valka, and Valka's god, that he acts. The Nameless Mother, the Queen of all night, Valka's mother, maker, and patroness. She had taken humanity for her own by adoption, sent Valka as her emissary, made Marlow her champion. Hadrian demands Suryandi swear fealty to him, and cuts off one of the prince's horns. He declares he will take the throne of mankind for himself, and will need the Cielsen legions to help in doing so. Suryandi refuses, and Hadrian then gestures to Octavia. She signals Commander Krim Garone, and the world ship begins to shake. Garone has mined the world ship's engines, effectively stranding the Cielsen. Suryandi remains silent, still not surrendering. Hadrian in response unkindles his sword, and the Tamburlaine gunners then open fire on the Cielsen court from a distance. Yanar unleashes the Panthers for a killing spree, and Hadrian returns to his palanquin to depart the battlefield. Yazan Ban Vahid jests with another Jadian official in a game of chess. Yazdan has served the Jadian secret police Yamazi for many long years, and presently scolds the younger official for making his moves in haste. The official is also his informant within the Jadian court, and asks him of Hadrian Marlowe. The outcast from the Solan Empire is a perceived danger to Jad, and Yazdan believes Marlowe is too dangerous to be given the protection of Prince Aldia. Yazdan wants Hadrian to be delivered back to the Empire, and also brings up Project Dubon. Dubon had been an attempt to glean insight into Marlowe's extraordinary abilities, but has been nothing but a failure. Yazdan thus believes Hadrian to be a lie, the stories surrounding him false. It is then revealed that Yazdan has been behind several assassination attempts on Cassandra, the daughter of Hadrian. The game concludes, and later that night Yazdan heads to the bathhouse, his head racing through the various potential schemes to terminate the still-growing fetus of Cassandra. It will be roughly a year until she is fully born, and Yazdan summons his servant Narcissus to prepare his bath. He leans in to study his reflection, but is suddenly slammed into the water. A deep, dark voice echoes behind him, and Yazdan stumbles to his feet to find Hadrian Marlowe. He knows of Yazdan's schemes, and sees right through the Yamazi's blustering. Hadrian threatens Yazdan with death, but admits he cannot harm him as the Yamazi are under the protection of Prince Aldia. However, he knows Yazdan's enmity of him is also no secret, and that he cannot with certainty prove Hadrian was ever here. They have reached a stalemate, and Hadrian orders him to end the attempts on Cassandra's life. Yazdan is forced to confess, and Hadrian departs. He gives Yazdan a chess piece before he leaves. The shaken intelligence agent looks at it, recognizing it to be the Emperor from the set in his bedchamber, the very set he used to play just hours before. Hadrian Marlowe, seated by the High Prince of Jad, looks up at a group of black starships descending from the sky. Aldia do Otranto is nearly 1,000 years old, and Hadrian's patron and effectively jailer on Jad. Hadrian, however, is able to live in comfort, and stares at the arriving ships carrying men from Oanos. Before both men is also the young daughter of Hadrian, Cassandra. Hadrian remarks that the men of Oanos are rumored to pay tribute to the Lothrians, but the fact that they are visiting Jad implies they do not want war. The shuttles land before Hadrian, Aldia, Cassandra, and the servant Nima, as well as many other Jadian nobles. A figure in blue robes emerges to present Izemrasin the Embraced, a prince of Oanos. The prince steps out with a contingent of soldiers and a golden lion as large as a horse. Hadrian knows the prince has a reputation for hunting, having designed great creatures for pursuit in his deadly games. Aldia greets Izemrasin, who has come on the behalf of King Azenzar III. Izemrasin then openly admits his people pay tribute to the Lothrians, but proclaims that in light of the Commonwealth allying with the Cielsen, Oanos looks to break away from that agreement. The prince presents himself as a gift, a son to the High Prince of Jad. It is for his own protection, as well as to unite the two nations against the Lothrians and the Cielsen. Izemrasin boldly asks for a seat on the Doma Gavani, the highest council of Jad. Oanos would effectively become an 82nd Principality of Jad, but for Hadrian's host nation there are far more cons than benefits. Jad will effectively be roped into a binding agreement with Oanos to protect it, gaining only 3 systems while Oanos obtains considerable political power. The Jadian delegation, however, looks down on Izemrasin as a lesser race. The prince turns to Hadrian himself, having recognized him from Hadrian's triumph on Forum centuries ago. Aldia then ends the meeting, telling Izemrasin the Jadians will consider his proposition. Hadrian and Aldia discuss the prince's offer, noting how he seemed almost desperate to ingratiate himself to Jad. It is folly to consider Izemrasin would ever be inducted into the Doma Gavani, but Aldia admits marriage would still be advantageous to Jad. Later, a feast is held to formally welcome the Oanosine delegation. Hadrian sits by Aldia's side at the Jadian high table, where a woman tries to seduce him. Hadrian gruffly rebuffs her advances, and then Izemrasin rises. He thanks the Jadians for their hospitality, but in a grievous insult, claims they are all equals. Izemrasin then brings forth a gift, 12 cages containing many birds of paradise. At a signal, the birds then begin to sing. 3 moons there were o'er Jad of old, 3 moons there shine there still, and their Katanis, proud and bold, ruled over sea and hill. His sword, like crystal, caught the sun, his will a bar of steel. Thus round his high seat, one by one, the princes came to kneel. The song speaks of Il Balanta du Dom Katanis, champion of Jad for winning its independence from the Solan Empire. Katanis had also married the daughter of the emperor, thus forming a long-lasting alliance between the two nations. It is a blunt message by Azemrasin, styling himself as a second Katanis. The prince then presents Otrantes 2 Simurgs, ancient symbols of Jad he has bred in Aldia's honor. They are powerful beasts, one with a lion's head and the other of a dog, a male and female. Their bodies are part feline, canine, lion, and wolf, with feathered tails of peafowl. The Jadians are stunned, and the male Simurg roars. The birds take off in fear, sending the feast into chaos. The Simurgs also panic, but Azemrasin bravely subdues the male. Hadrian orders Cassandra to stay down, and is then struck by a panicking bird. Its claws grab his hand, which immediately begins to burn. Hadrian draws his sword, for he now knows the birds are poisoned. Another bird flies directly for the High Prince, and Hadrian cuts it in half. He begins to reel from the poison as several other victims collapse. Azemrasin claims he knew nothing about the plot as he is led away by the Jadians. Hadrian immediately suspects the Lothrians, and his wounds are treated with the other Jadians. However, regardless of Azemrasin's intent, his cause has taken a grievous blow. At his trial a week later, he is accused of attempted regicide and claims innocence. Aldia is openly skeptical as Azemrasin claims he was betrayed. The prince has conducted his own investigation into the disaster, and one of his servants is found to be guilty. An utterly dejected woman named Islan is led in, having been responsible for the caretaking of the birds. She claims to serve only what is right, and that she acted alone. Azemrasin claims she is a Lothrian spy, drawing Hadrian from his seat. He cannot believe the prince did not know of Islan's deception beforehand. Islan begins to be led away, but then she speaks in Lothrian and points at High Prince Aldia. Her hand explodes, revealing a metal gun implanted in her arm. Aldia is protected by the shields around his throne, but then Azemrasin strikes Islan's arm to stop her. The gun instead slices through the Jadian crowd, killing many and narrowly missing Hadrian. Islan dies, and Aldia then stands and commends Azemrasin for his heroism, agreeing to take him in as a son. Weeks pass, and Hadrian remains aloof as talks develop between the Oanocene and Aldia. Azemrasin attempts to contact him twice for an audience as Hadrian, Nima, and Cassandra stay in the palaces for the time being. The time comes for Azemrasin to depart, and Hadrian attends the final farewell, leaving Cassandra and Nima behind. Azemrasin share parting courtesies, and Azemrasin turns to Hadrian. Surprisingly shaking, he asks Hadrian if he had truly struck the emperor. Hadrian is confused, and the prince then asks to shake his hand, extending an arm with a golden gauntlet of a serpent. But then, the serpent lunges out, revealed to be alive. Hadrian leaps back just in time as Azemrasin draws his sword. The two men duel, but Hadrian quickly realizes Azemrasin possesses a physical strength he cannot match. He is driven down, but Azemrasin attempts to land a killing blow and oversteps. Hadrian slices the prince's leg, causing him to stumble down. He knees him in the ribs, but Azemrasin spits actual venom at Hadrian's face, causing him to stagger back. Around them, the Oanocene delegation is all killed as Azemrasin dies. Aldia approaches Hadrian to check on him, and the half-mortal finally realizes that he had been the assassination target the entire time. The great Lord of Men looks down at a cowering abbot, called the Archimandrite. He scowls at the black banners behind her, symbols of the Old Kingdom. There was a time, in aeons long past, when that banner had dominated even the farthest suns. Their faith had been strong in those days, when their gods fought with them, and went before the hordes of the kings like the lightning. That king has brought their race to the stars, creating 12,000 places for the many tribes of their people to meet and worship the gods. Now, however, their number has dwindled, those that remain falling to decadence and weakness. The Lord of Men now stands in one such surviving shrine, resenting the luxury he sees the abbot living in. For they are intended to deny all material wants, to serve as a reminder of the paradise where their people can be reunited with the gods and escape the universe. Now the shrine, called an Everhold in his language, must be destroyed and cleansed. The Lord glares down at the abbot, who to his fury does not see the way to true salvation. The abbot calls him the prophet, the abyss crosser, the god-shaped. The prophet stares at his women lovers and slaves looking on. You know the great working is begun. I have begun it. I will reconcile our race with the gods who made us, who would save us from this hideous order. The prophet then asks the abbot and several other captive priests what the most precious thing is. The abbot answers power, to the despair of the prophet. He replies the answer is truth, for it is truth that is the substance of the gods, and it is the truth that they are all nothing at all. He commands the abbot to surrender what is locked away in the shrine's vaults, for in there are the messages and plans of the chieftains of men. The Archimandrite is terrified, for the Everhold is supposed to be a site of neutrality. The prophet needs these secrets to gain power and control over the chieftains. A priest speaks up in objection, and the prophet has it killed. He gives the body to his women, for their pleasure and consumption. The Archimandrite refuses to surrender the keys to the vaults, but the prophet then sheathes his blade. A ray of light then shines through the roof, and cuts through the wings of one of the statues. Rock falls to the ground, and the prophet remains unmoved. Only he knows it is the weapon of a dwarf that had offered its service to him. That dwarf called Sagara had offered itself as a slave to the prophet, who had been more than glad to take advantage of its weapons. The weapon then enters through the hole in the roof, and with several blades resembling feathers, fires lasers that open the vault door. You see the proof? I will raise a new kingdom, greater even than the old. I will show our people the way once more. The prophet turns and moves towards the silver wing of blades. He then faces his generals and concubines, dubbed as White Hand, Early Born, Living One, Nubile, White-Limbed, Ravenous, and Seeker are their names. Seeker is the one most dear to him, and one of their spawn they had sacrificed to the dreamer in the palace of his skull. The prophet gives Seeker the Archimandrite, and Seeker takes on a masculine role and bites the abbot. The other priests are slaughtered, and the prophet then descends into the vault. There he finds stone tablets and statues, all belonging to the first men, the many-legged. The gods had fought with the first men as well, who had built a great kingdom, but they are long gone, and the prophet returns to his women. Above them all is a mural, one of their gods in its many arms, eyes, and 6-fingered hands. He had sworn to find the gods, to call them back from beyond the farthest suns, to fling wide the gates of paradise, and wash this broken world away.